LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the November 8th edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. This is the first Sunday Live Clip Roundup after Biden has been declared the victor of the 2020 presidential election, although I did do a live stream last Friday where I called the election for Biden about 24 hours before the networks did. I put a link down in the video description to my live stream from last Friday if you missed that briefly dealt with why I thought the math showed Biden was going to win. And then I also talked about how people reacted to this weird press conference Donald Trump did on Thursday night that really threatened our democracy, saying that he won the election was stolen, and I showed how MSNBC and Fox News both reacted to that, and MSNBC hoping Fox News might save us from Trump's final meltdown. You can watch that if you want. It's about 90 minutes long. This Sunday, I picked out the 13 best, most newsworthy clips from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States, for what should be a really informative, educational, fair use media criticism and political commentary show for you all tonight. I have the clip list that I use, my notes for those 13 clips, also the source of all the clips, the big five corporate outlets, also Saturday Night Live. I have political comedy from Saturday Night Live. My topic is democracy after Trump, and it's kind of two parts. One part is kind of short about getting him out, what he might break on his way out, what parts of our democracy he still might be capable of breaking in the next 73 days, 73 more days of Trump till January 20th, 2021. And then most of my clips will be focused on what happens next, this fight that's going on in the Democratic Party between compromise and maximizing progressive policies, and I'll spend a lot of time talking about that. But first I want to get to the political comedy that I promised. I have two clips from last night's Saturday Night Live. First, and they show two different reactions to Trump losing. The first is the more gloating reaction that you might expect from Jim Carrey, because it uses this old Jim Carrey catchphrase that I guess we were all waiting for. I even showed it in the thumbnail for this video, and I will show you. This is about 38 seconds of the cold open from Saturday Night Live. You can watch the whole thing, including Alec Baldwin. There's no Alec Baldwin. This is just Joe Biden first talking about how he's going to be conciliatory, reaching out to the people who didn't vote for him. But then here comes the Jim Carrey catchphrase I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
We're not mad at them. We have to act graciously in victory, though. We need to go forward together. Unfortunately, there are situations in life, and this is one of them, where there must be a winner and a loser.
And you can see Alec Baldwin as Donald Trump there, right at the very end of that clip. If you want to see the whole thing, I put a link down in the video description to the whole Saturday Night Live episode on the NBC website, also to that clip, and also Dave Chappelle's monologue. I was actually a little disappointed with Dave Chappelle's monologue, because I remember what Dave Chappelle said 4 years ago. He was the first host after Donald Trump won, and he talked then about giving Donald Trump a chance. And this time I thought he would talk about giving Joe Biden a chance, but I guess that's not he's trying to talk to the audience of his people, and those were the people who I guess needed to give Donald Trump a chance, to the extent he had any chance to be a better president than the worst president in my lifetime that we've experienced during the last 4 years. But instead, Dave Chappelle, I don't know, his monologue, the whole Saturday Night Live episode actually seemed like they had to do a lot of changes at the last minute. Remember, Biden, the networks called the election for Biden like 11 a.m. Pacific, my time, California time, and then Biden held his victory speech around 5 p.m. or 5:30 p.m. my time, and then 8:30 p.m. my time, Saturday Night Live was starting, so they had very little time to react. One thing I thought was pretty impressive is they had Maya Rudolph in the same suit Kamala Harris wore 3 hours earlier, or at least a good facsimile in that last clip. In this next clip, I don't know how much time Dave Chappelle had to work out his monologue in reaction to what had happened just in the last few hours, but he did make this call for empathy that actually, the more I think about it, I'm kind of getting behind this, at least as the first offer from Democrats to Republicans in the next couple months, during the next 73 days. I think treating Republicans and Trump voters and everyone except maybe Trump himself, and maybe even Trump himself. I'm a big believer in treating people with respect and dignity. That's sort of, I would say that is one of my core values, that every person deserves to be treated with respect and dignity. And I even tested that. That's why I spent several years as a criminal defense attorney, a public defender, defending people who couldn't afford a lawyer, who are accused of crimes. And our Constitution is based on the idea that every person, even if they're accused of a crime, if you read the Bill of Rights in your Constitution, here's my Constitution of the United States, everyone has a right to be treated with respect and dignity. That's what due process is. It doesn't mean that people who are guilty of crimes can't be punished. It just means they get due process, right to a jury trial, right to confront the witnesses against them, right to be free from cruel and unusual punishment. Every human being deserves that, no matter what they've done. And I think that that's kind of the basis of what Dave Chappelle is recommending in this strategy of reaching out. Radical empathy. That's, Joe Biden was supposedly the candidate of empathy. I don't know if my partisan viewers are going to agree with this position, but I was going to talk about it a little more after we watch about a minute and 20 seconds of Dave Chappelle's monologue. I didn't think it was that funny, but it actually, the more I thought about it, I realized how much it actually made me think, especially this last part. It's not goes all the way to the end. If you go all the way to the end, you get to the N-word, which I didn't include in the clip, but here's about 80 seconds of the 16-minute plus monologue from Dave Chappelle last night over here.
I would implore everybody who's celebrating the day to remember, it's good to be a humble winner. Remember when I was here 4 years ago? Remember how bad that felt? Remember that half the country right now still feels that way. Please remember that. Remember that for the first time in the history of America, the life expectancy of white people is dropping because of heroin, because of suicide. All these white people out there that feel that anguish, that pain, that mad because they think nobody cares. And maybe they don't. Let me tell you something. I know how that feels. I promise you, I know how that feels. If you're a police officer, and every time you put your uniform on, you feel like you got a target on your back. You're appalled by the ingratitude that people have when you would risk your life to save them. Oh, man, believe me. I know how that feels. Everyone knows how that feels. But here's the difference between me and you. You guys hate each other for that. And I don't hate anybody. I just hate that feeling.
And I actually like that sentiment expressed by Dave Chappelle. I'm a longtime Dave Chappelle fan. I actually saw Dave Chappelle at a small club in St. Louis in, like, what was it, 1995, before like the Chappelle show, anything. I was in the front row. I even had like a short little he did some crowd work on me. It was kind of embarrassing. I don't even want to go into that. But, and then I've seen Dave Chappelle multiple times. I saw him when he like got confrontational with the audience one year when he played here in Sacramento. So I'm a great fan of Dave Chappelle, but I just didn't think his monologue was that funny this time. I was disappointed because I was hoping that he would call back what he said 4 years ago, and it's kind of fortuitous. He was the host right after Trump won and now right after Biden won. But anyway, there's a link down in the video description. You can watch the whole Dave Chappelle monologue. But I did want to show that one part and talk about the empathy thing again when I get to some of the newsmaker clips, and also the compromise versus trying to maximize the progressive policies that Biden can ram through at the beginning of his presidency, or should he reach out? And I think there might be sort of this good cop, bad cop thing that Democrats might be able to do. And one other thing I realized before I get to the news summaries is because the Senate is still up in the air, it looks like it's going to depend on these two runoffs in Georgia that won't take place till January 5th. So neither Biden, the president-elect, nor Mitch McConnell, the possible Senate Majority Leader, will know who is going to control the Senate for the next 60 days till that January 5th runoff. And that actually gives Biden and McConnell some time to negotiate with each other, without knowing which way it's going to turn out. Like, Biden could make some promises to McConnell about things he won't do if the Democrats take control of the Senate, and then McConnell can make some promises about what he'll do if the Republicans retain control of the Senate. And one thing you have to remember about Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell just got elected to his 7th term in the Senate, which means he's been there for six terms. That's 6 times 6 is 36 years. And I think Biden was elected to the Senate. I heard some trivia fact that it was today or yesterday, 42 years ago today or yesterday. I think it was even today. Biden was first elected to the Senate. So they were both in the Senate together for 30 years, and then Biden was vice president. So Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden have known each other a really long time. I don't know if whether they trust each other, but they know each other. And that means they could come to some kind of deal, especially some kind of deal before they know who's going to control the Senate. That's just something I've been thinking about based on the news. You can let me know what you think about that whole theory while we watch the 5 news summaries from the 5 big corporate outlets together. This week I just put them in order from longest to shortest, but I actually think CBS News' Face the Nation news summary that I'm going to show you is one of the best ones, because it's one of the metrics I use every week is how are they covering one of the biggest stories, COVID-19. Most of the news outlets kind of shirked on that this week a little bit, I guess because it's such big news that Biden won, but COVID cases reached new records this last week. 100,000, 120,000 cases a day, and things are not looking good. And that's something that Margaret Brennan points out at the beginning of this news summary, and then she gives it over to Mark Strassman, who was in Atlanta every week for the last 6 months, supposedly waiting for an interview with someone from the CDC, but he actually barely mentions COVID and instead does the political story that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch that news summary together from CBS News' Face the Nation this morning over here.
Good morning. Welcome to Face the Nation and to a new week. Last week, American democracy was tested as we waited more than 3.5 days for votes to be counted and a presidential projection to be made. Saturday morning, former Vice President Joe Biden was projected the winner, defeating an incumbent for only the fourth time in the past 100 years. And although America has decided, President Trump has not conceded that he's been defeated. As of this morning, President-elect Biden has 279 electoral votes, 9 more than the 270 needed to win. 4 states have not been determined yet. Georgia and North Carolina are toss-ups. Arizona is leaning Democrat, and President Trump is likely to win in Alaska. Despite the relief that the election is over, the coronavirus pandemic around the world has reached dangerous highs in case numbers. Yesterday, the U.S. recorded over 127,000 new cases, while Europe is seeing its own terrifying highs. France, a country with 1/5 the population of the U.S., reported nearly 90,000 cases on Saturday. We begin this morning with CBS News national correspondent Mark Strassman in Atlanta.
From sea to shining sea, our two Americas have a result, but not reconciliation.
No respect for this country.
Instant reaction coast to coast to the president-elect. And already, the winner is repudiated by roughly half the country, just like his predecessor.
We haven't raised the white flag by no stretch of the imagination. You know, we're here until this thing is rock solid done.
In Pennsylvania, the Keystone battleground state, Trump supporters claimed with zero proof, 600,000 votes had been stolen.
Some places may be amateurs at voter fraud. Philadelphia is a professional place for voter fraud.
In the next few days, expect the Trump legal team to file a series of long-shot lawsuits. They filed a new one Saturday in Arizona. Those suits will allege widespread vote-stealing irregularities, from faulty signatures to tallies from dead people. Critics, including some Republicans, charge it's all political theater.
I think the president's comments that there's some national conspiracy around this aren't supported by any of the facts.
Courts have rejected similar suits in Pennsylvania, Nevada, Michigan, and Georgia.
We will not give up on this process until every last issue has been resolved.
For the Trump campaign, that leaves recounts in razor-thin races. Georgia has called for one. Wisconsin's another possibility. So's Pennsylvania. But that state's law requires a margin of 0.5% or less. And the Biden lead is beyond that and growing. Recounts in past major elections have shifted votes from a handful to a few hundred, but they seldom change outcomes. Margaret?
Mark Strassman in Atlanta. Thanks. The president has been uncharacteristically quiet since the race was called, with the exception of Twitter activity. That's not the case just outside the White House. Paula Reed reports.
And then he not only had this Paula Reed report from the White House, they had Holly Williams. I don't know what happened to Elizabeth Palmer, who normally does their European reporting, but Holly Williams did a report from Moscow reporting on European reaction and even Russian reaction, like how most of Europe is happy that Biden is president. I'm glad to hear that. But like I said, I actually thought that CBS News Face the Nation news summary with Margaret Brennan at the beginning mentioning the problems with COVID, and then Mark Strassman in Atlanta, who usually gives the COVID report, doing the political report, was still a fairly good, extensive report on the news of the last few days. And like I said, I'm going from longest to shortest. The next longest one is Fox News Sunday, and I actually thought that Fox News did a pretty good job of reporting news journalistically on this program this morning. There's been a lot of weird stuff going on Fox News. Some of the time, I talked about that, like I said, in my live stream on Friday. I put a link down in the video description. It's titled Biden Wins, Now MSNBC Hoping Fox News Saves Us from Trump's Final Meltdown. And I spend most of the time, I talk a little bit about Biden winning, but then mostly talk about how Fox News maybe or maybe not moving away from Trump to save the future of the Republican Party. Who knows? But I think in this news summary that I'm about to show you from Fox News, Jacqui Heinrich, who does the news summary from the Biden campaign, actually, you don't hear that he's in the basement. You don't hear that he's demented. You don't hear that he's going to kill the energy industry. You actually hear some, like, normal reporting from Jacqui Heinrich, and even David Spunt, reporting from the Trump campaign, talks about how this weird story that's come out that even though Trump is raging, that unnamed sources are saying that he will, if his legal maneuvers don't pan out, he will actually concede the election and graciously transfer power to Biden. I will believe that when I see it, especially when it's just unnamed sources. The one thing that I would criticize David Spunt's report at the end of this clip for is they talk about the press conference at Four Seasons Total Landscaping, but they never talk about why did the Trump campaign lawyers do a press conference in the parking lot of a landscaping company between an adult bookstore and a crematorium. But that didn't get brought up on most of the big five corporate outlets this morning. But it was really weird, and it shows up in this news summary that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
And hello again from Fox News in Washington. Here are the headlines this busy Sunday. Joe Biden is now projected to win at least 290 electoral votes, more than enough to become the nation's 46th president. In a tight race against Donald Trump, who is challenging the results in a broad legal offensive, claiming fraud and voting irregularities. The president yet to concede, but the Biden transition team already hard at work. In a moment, we'll speak with former Mayor Pete Buttigieg, a member of the Biden transition. But we begin this hour with Fox team coverage. David Spunt is at the White House. But let's start with Jacqui Heinrich, who's covering the president-elect in Wilmington, Delaware. Jacqui.
Chris, Joe Biden promised throughout his campaign he will be a president for all Americans, and he dedicated a moment of his victory speech to reassuring Trump supporters. But work on the issues will begin long before moving into the White House. No days off after a hard-fought campaign delivered Joe Biden the office he's chased for decades and Kamala Harris a seat at the table, opening doors for generations to come. The transition team is hard at work over three key goals: getting a handle on the pandemic, repairing the economy, and beginning justice initiatives already promised by the campaign. The only news will be who's leading each charge.
I will name a group of leading scientists and experts as transition advisors to help take the Biden-Harris COVID plan and convert it into an action blueprint.
One face of the COVID front, former Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy, who's been acting as an advisor to the Biden campaign. The incoming administration plans to spotlight messaging from public health experts, contrasting the posture of the Trump White House, while also securing supply chains and working on a vaccine. Addressing the public health crisis will come ahead of many cabinet appointments, which may stretch across party lines, with the understanding confirmations may go through a Republican-controlled Senate. Biden sources are reluctant to go on the record, leery that President Trump may do everything in his power to stop an easy transition, Chris.
Jacqui Heinrich reporting from Wilmington, Delaware. Jacqui, thank you. Now, let's bring in David Spunt at the White House. David.
Chris, good morning. The president appears to be having a hard time accepting defeat. Transition talks between Team Biden and Team Trump are well underway, but this current president is nowhere near conceding. As thousands celebrated in the streets just outside the White House on Saturday, President Trump, with a brief wave, returned from a day of golf at his Northern Virginia club. As the president hit the links, his legal team held a news conference in Philadelphia, where votes are still being counted. The president's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, announced legal action related to alleged ballot irregularities.
As a friend of mine says, I don't believe in conspiracies, but I also don't believe in coincidences. Kind of funny that all Republicans were rejected here, and all Republicans were
I don't know why that, for some reason, that clip ended earlier than I thought it would, but I guess it ended on the point that I wanted to make about the Four Seasons total landscaping press conference that was ridiculous. I don't know. I thought I took the whole clip. But anyway, at a link down in the video description, you can see the full Fox News Sunday news summary. I don't know why that clip ended early. I swear that I took the whole clip. But anyway, before I get to the next news summary, I wanted to acknowledge and thank the super chat contributors I saw so far here. Matthew and Marie Wayne, is that how you pronounce that? Here you go. Sorry, Matthew and Mary Waney, if that's how you pronounce that. Matthew, the R.I.P. Alex Trebek, that's definitely appreciated. I'm a big Jeopardy fan. That I have been watching Jeopardy for decades. I actually did the online test a couple times, and like 25 years ago, and then just a couple years ago, I passed the online test and went to LA to try out for the show in person. I never made it to the show, but I never met Alex Trebek, but I have been watching Alex Trebek since 1984. I'm a big trivia fan, a big, I don't know, I guess, what is a big gap in our cultural experience, and the answer is the death of Alex Trebek. R.I.P. Alex Trebek. I agree with you, Matthew, on that point, definitely. And also, I appreciate that comment from Mary Waney about my show helping in the last few years. Hopefully this is the end of the Trump era. I guess Trump's going to be out there somewhere, but hopefully much less powerful a voice in our politics. But anyway, I want to move on to my next three news summaries. I showed you CBS and Fox News. Now is NBC News' Meet the Press news summary, usually the one I show first. It was still pretty good, but there's no package. You'll see at the end of this news summary, Chuck Todd goes to someone reporting from the Biden campaign and from the Trump White House, like you see on Fox News, but instead of them actually giving a report, they do a back and forth questioning. And so I don't actually show that, but I will show the initial news summary from Chuck Todd saying that we are a deeply divided nation, one side celebrating, one side feeling kind of like Dave Chappelle was saying on Saturday Night Live, also on NBC last night. Also reporting on the narrow blue wall. Biden has reconstituted the narrow blue wall in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And anyway, I'll talk a little more about the NBC News Meet the Press news summary this morning after we watch it together over here.
And a good Sunday morning. One side of a deeply divided country is celebrating this weekend. A nationwide block party broke out from coast to coast yesterday in spontaneous celebrations, mostly in cities, moments after television networks called the election for Joe Biden.
We love Joe Biden. It's the election of our lifetime. It impacts our future so much, and it just means so much that it's happening. We did it. We did it.
Ecstatic. I'm ecstatic. Like, that's it. Like, it's electricity going through my body at this very moment.
Last night in Delaware, the new president-elect and Kamala Harris addressed supporters and the nation.
Now, let's give each other a chance. It's time to put away the harsh rhetoric, lower the temperature, see each other again, listen to each other again.
Perhaps by now you know the story. Biden won by rebuilding, barely, the Democrats' northern industrial blue wall, taking Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, all of them narrowly. After all, Wisconsin's technically going to be a recount. And more importantly, adding, it looks like, perhaps, 2 Sunbelt states, Georgia and Arizona. Of course, those races are not called, but Biden leads in both. Biden is heading for a solid, if unspectacular, popular vote victory, somewhere in between Barack Obama's 2008 and 2012 wins. But the raw vote is quite impressive. The big lesson of this election, 2016 was not a fluke. It was a signal. While voters rejected President Trump, the individual, he still won far more votes than last time, and it was hardly the wholesale rejection of Trumpism that Democrats had anticipated. Still, the president, who has yet to concede, is refusing even to admit that he lost. He's claiming that illegal votes put Joe Biden over the top, which is false. He's claiming that Joe Biden is rushing to falsely pose as the winner. That is not true. And that he actually won the election and did so by a lot. Well, that's wrong. And as you can see by these numbers, by a lot. In that spirit, President Trump and his allies have launched about a dozen lawsuits to overturn the outcome of the election. We've got the story covered this morning, from the presidential election to the Senate control to the House. And we're going to start with 2 reports, beginning with NBC News White House correspondent Kristen Welker, who's at Biden headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. So, Kristen, they want a signal.
And like I said, I'm not going to show you those 2 reports because unlike the Fox News Sunday report, it's like a back and forth dialogue between Chuck Todd and the reporters, not like a set piece like you saw from David Spunt and Jacqui Heinrich. But if you want to watch the whole thing, there's a link down in the video description to see NBC News' Meet the Press. I have 2 more news summaries before I get to the Newsmaker clips. The next one is CNN's State of the Union. Jake Tapper always starts the program telling us what is the State of the Union this week. And this week, the State of the Union is where turning the proverbial page. That's another way of saying Biden has won, Trump is gone. What is going to happen with our democracy after Trump? That's my main topic, of course. And then you'll see CNN cover the fact that Biden is the 46th president of the United States. But after showing a clip of Biden saying we need to heal our nation and bring us together with unity, then also Trump failing to concede in the 4th of the 5 news summaries I'm going to show you tonight over here.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, where the State of our Union is turning the proverbial page. Joe Biden will be the 46th president of the United States of America, and at his side, the very first woman vice president, current Senator Kamala Harris. Last night, the president-elect addressed the nation, saying he would be a president for all Americans.
Folks, I'm a proud Democrat, but I will govern as an American president. I'll work as hard for those who didn't vote for me as those who did. Let this grim era of demonization in America begin to end here and now.
He also called this moment in America a, quote, time to heal the wounds of division, but also the ravages of a pandemic, which has already killed more than 237,000 Americans and is only getting worse. One thing the new president-elect could not mention last night, a concession call, a tradition in democracies and a courtesy that President Trump received from Hillary Clinton, but is so far refusing to offer Vice President Biden, President-elect Biden. Instead, President Trump has railed on Twitter, claiming he will be pursuing legal action, though his team has not presented any evidence for widespread fraud or irregularities to date, and Republican election officials from coast to coast attest to a clean and fair election. Overnight, CNN reported that even the president's son-in-law and top advisor, Jared Kushner, has approached the president about conceding. Today, we have a special commercial-free hour of State of the Union for you, including Democrats like Congressman James Clyburn and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Democrat Stacey Abrams, along with Republicans such as Senator Mitt Romney and Maryland Governor Larry Hogan. But we're going to begin today in Wilmington, Delaware, where we are joined by senior advisor to the Biden campaign, Symone Sanders.
I don't have a Symone Sanders clip, but I do have an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez clip. That's clip 11. If you're following along on the clip list here, I put a link down in the video description to my clip list. There's also a link down there to support my videos financially on Patreon. If you want to become a patron on Patreon, there's a link down there. Also, direct contributions from PayPal. I did want to acknowledge some more Super Chat contributors I saw in the live comments along the way. Trying to import it here. So thanks for that. And and I saw Grizzly Bear, after I even took that screenshot, thanked me for all the coverage and paying extra for a YMCA dance. I don't know, is that YMCA? Is that, did you just pay extra for me doing the YMCA dance or whatever? I don't mind spending 10 seconds doing a YMCA dance for that purpose. Thank you, Grizzly Bear, for that. And Handy Salmon saying, Alex, my favorite Canadian. Chairs Bed, Four Seasons, Total Landscaping is one of the funniest things to happen during the reality TV show. I know, it was like something from Veep. I think that was like a Veep. That's like maybe some evidence that we're all living in some sort of Matrix-style simulation, because that was just too weird. I agree with you on that, Chairs Bed. And I also appreciate Lulu Girl's Super Chat contribution about the Four Seasons, Leave It to Rudy. So yeah, thank you for all of that. I want to get to the final shortest news summary. This is the ABC News this week with George Stephanopoulos news summary. America chooses to end Trump. And then talking about President-elect Biden's message, time to heal, Trump raging, and also showing the fact that it looks like Biden is going to end up with the same number of electoral votes that Trump said was such a huge victory, 306, which we'll see in this final news summary from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos this morning. Over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week, the week America chose to end the Trump presidency. After 4 years of division and tumult, assaults on truth and treasured institutions, voters turned out in record numbers to turn the page, replacing a reality TV star raised in wealth with a career politician from the working class. In his first speech as president-elect, a forceful Joe Biden delivered a soothing message. It's time to heal.
For all those of you who voted for President Trump, I understand the disappointment tonight. I've lost a couple times myself, but now let's give each other a chance. It's time to put away the harsh rhetoric, lower the temperature, see each other again, listen to each other again. And to make progress, we have to stop treating our opponents as our enemies. They are not our enemies. They are Americans.
As we come on the air this morning, President Trump is raging against the results with false statements on Twitter. His team vowing to overturn them with legal challenges that have little prospect of success. The votes are still being counted across the country, and Joe Biden's lead in the popular vote is over 4 million and climbing. He's ahead in enough states to eventually match the 306 electoral votes won by Trump in 2016. This morning, we look back at the lessons of this election, look ahead to the challenges now facing Joe Biden and the country he will lead. We begin with our chief White House correspondent, John Karl, Rachel Scott in Wilmington with President-elect Biden. And Rachel, let me begin with you. The Biden.
So you can see there, ABC did kind of the same thing NBC did this week, where they had two correspondents, one with the Trump campaign, one with the Biden campaign, kind of like Fox News does, but neither one of them did a set report. They did a back and forth Q&A with the host. So I decided not to take those clips because although Jonathan Karl also talked about this idea that unnamed sources in the Trump administration are saying that Trump is going to concede the election if his legal maneuvers don't pan out, and he will concede and then start the peaceful transfer of power. But I don't know. I'll believe it when I hear it from Trump himself, because I haven't seen Trump concede to being a loser before, a lahu sahur, as Jim Carrey would say. But I now am going to get to the newsmaker clips. I have one Republican talking about how long, and this is Roy Blunt, senator from Missouri. I lived in Missouri from like 1993 to 1998. That's 5 long years, and at that point Missouri was more of a purple state. I think Trump won Missouri by like 15 points. I don't know what happened to Missouri to make it go so far in the Republican direction, but Roy Blunt is definitely a red state Republican, and even he is saying he's giving Trump like 5 days to come up with the evidence to show the election was stolen from him, and if he doesn't do it, 5 days, maybe a week, that's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, supposedly the Trump lawyers are going to file their lawsuits on Monday, and by next Sunday, I hope to be reporting to you that many more Republicans are going to be saying Trump is a lahu zahur and should concede the election. But Roy Blunt is not ready for that, under questioning from George Stephanopoulos that this is kind of like the Zoom quality of the Sunday morning news analysis shows during COVID. At the beginning here, they go like, no, you go ahead. But you get the idea of what Roy Blunt is saying by the end of this 3-minute, 20-second clip that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
We move forward.
Let me stop you right there.
Let me say one other thing.
Okay.
Let me say one other thing. Go ahead.
Well, Senator Murkowski and Senator Romney have both. Okay, go ahead. Say your piece, and then I'll respond with my next question.
Well, they certainly have the right to do whatever they want to do. I think this is a time when the extra 5 days or so to get the process finished, to actually let the states look at the challenges in their state. This is a close election. This is closer than anybody thought. If you're the president and you look at the press projecting something, almost nothing the press projected in this election turned out to be right. There was no blue wave. If there is a mandate, the mandate is we want people to work together. There weren't great losses of Republican candidates because of President Trump, nor did President Trump get a thrashing. He actually, with Hispanic voters, with black voters, with voters
Senator,
that nobody expected to come to him,
Let's talk about the facts. Let's talk about the facts right now. I mean, Senator Murkowski and Senator Romney have both acknowledged the victory, congratulated President-elect Biden. The president-elect is up by 10,000 votes in Georgia, almost 20 in Arizona, 27 in Nevada, 37,000 and climbing in Pennsylvania, far more in the other states. You're a former Secretary of State. I've spoken with Secretary of States, Democrat and Republican state officials over the last several days. They've said they've seen no widespread evidence of any kind of fraud at all. Joe Biden has won this election. Why can't you acknowledge it?
Well, what I said on Friday and what Chris Christie said just a few minutes ago on this show is it's time for the president's lawyers to present the facts, and then it's time for those facts to speak for themselves. It's going to be much easier to work toward the kind of transition we want. Look at the inauguration, which I'm going to have the honor of chairing again this time, and bringing the country together if everybody feels like we went through a process and everybody was heard. Every legal vote was counted. Every illegal vote was challenged and not counted. We come to a conclusion. I think that happens pretty quickly. Almost every state within 7 to 10 days of the election goes through that entire canvas. There are always some changes. Seems unlikely that any changes could be big enough to make a difference, but this is a close election, and we need to acknowledge that. I read twice in reports this morning the Democrat blue wall has returned, the blue wall of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. The blue wall is at best a blue speed bump now. This is a competitive country. There is a message to whoever the next president is to work together. I look forward to the president dealing with this however he needs to deal with it. I thought Vice President Biden did a great job last night talking about where the country wants to head. And one way to do that is to finish this election the way it deserves to be finished.
You're chairman of the Rules Committee right now, in charge of the inauguration, as you said. Are we going to have anything like a normal inauguration?
So you can see there that Roy Blunt of Missouri praises Biden at the end of that clip, gives the Trump campaign maybe 5 days. By next Sunday, there may be a lot more Republicans, not just Lisa Murkowski and Mitt Romney, calling for Trump to tone down his rhetoric or concede the election, or was it Charlie Baker, the governor of Massachusetts, in one of the news summaries I showed you. But if you're a Republican in Massachusetts, that's kind of like Mitt Romney was governor of Massachusetts. So anyway, Roy Blunt isn't there yet, but he did ask for the evidence. I don't know. One thing he talked about was how Trump did better, how there wasn't a mandate. And there's this one statistic I've been seeing. I even saw it on MSNBC's AM Joy this morning. Ari Melber was hosting. I took this screenshot of this poll here. Support for President Trump among different ethnicities. You see white men, white women, black women, Latinx men and women, and others, comparing 2016 and 2020. And you see Trump did better, apparently, than he did 4 years ago with black men, black women, Latinx men, Latinx women, everyone except for white men. He even did better with white women. He did the only place that Joe Biden did better, apparently, according to that exit polling, was with white men. That's the only place Biden did better. Though when they showed that chart on AM Joy, Jason Johnson, who I guess has a political science background, pointed out that might have to do with the like COVID-19 mail-in voting situation, where the exit polling, and I know the exit polling tries to capture mail-in voting, but they might just be not getting responses from people who are voting by mail and not responding to polling. That's a possibility. But the voting numbers I've seen kind of suggest that the reason Biden won is he did better with those white males, and also the third party candidates didn't do as well. It's basically Biden got the votes of Gary Johnson, the Libertarian, in 2016, and Jill Stein, the Green Party candidate. the third-party candidates didn't do as well, especially in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, the so-called blue wall. Although one thing I like the term Roy Blunt used there. The blue wall is now a blue speed bump. But I don't know. By the end of all the votes being counted, it looks like Democrats are not only going to retake their blue wall, they're going to cut into the Republican red wall in the Sun Belt. It looks like Georgia and Arizona, not North Carolina, but Georgia and Arizona are going to be Biden states. So I wouldn't be so confident of being the electoral and Senate victor for years to come as Roy Blunt was in that last clip. But you can let me know what you think in the comment section. And now I'm going to move on to all the Democrats. And this is more about how the Democratic Party is going to react to Biden winning. Is there going to be a big fight in the Democratic Party? Apparently that's already happening. And you're going to see that in all of these next 5 clips, starting with the deputy campaign director for Joe Biden, who also the Biden campaign's communication director, Kate Bdeingfield, answers a question from Chuck Todd on NBC News' Meet the Press, asking about some things that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said. And Chuck Todd, he reads a quote from AOC that he isn't showing, and you'll see that in the next clip he actually reads the quote that he shows to Kate Bdeingfield when he talks to James Clyburn. But this is about the internal fight in the Democratic Party, with 2 clips from NBC News' Meet the Press, starting with Chuck Todd questioning Kate Bdeingfield this morning over here.
Some people hear the word consensus on the left and they think it means you're going to sell the left out. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said this in an interview about her expectations on how the Biden administration will be to the left of the party. And she says the history of the party tends to be that we get really excited about the grassroots to get elected, and then those communities are promptly abandoned right after an election. Let me ask you this. Do you believe that she's going to be disappointed or not when she sees the agenda of the Biden administration in the first 6 months?
No, I think that Vice President Biden campaigned on an incredibly progressive and aggressive agenda. Take a look, for example, at his climate plan. It's the boldest, biggest climate plan that's ever been put forward by a nominee running for president and now a president-elect. He's going to make good on those commitments. I mean, he spent time during this campaign bringing people together around this climate plan. He was able to get the endorsement of groups like the Sunrise Movement and the endorsement of labor for this plan. It's a big, aggressive plan. It's the perfect example of the kind of big effort that he is going to make to meet this moment and to meet these crises that we're in.
Kate Bdeingfield, the deputy campaign manager for the Biden-Harris ticket. Thanks for coming on, and again, congratulations.
So you saw on NBC News' Meet the Press there, they flashed the wrong quote while Chuck Todd was questioning Kate Bdeingfield, but they then read that same quote, or Chuck Todd read that same quote later when he was questioning James Clyburn, the representative from South Carolina, who was kind of a kingmaker, if you remember, and that was mentioned multiple times on the Sunday shows, that Biden was losing in New Hampshire and Iowa, and they got to South Carolina, and he got the endorsement of James Clyburn. That's where the African-American voters in the Democratic base chose Biden, and that was where he started his comeback that turned into winning the presidency from Donald Trump, beating an incumbent for the first time, or just the third time in my lifetime, I think, that an incumbent has been beaten, 4th time in the last 100 years. And yeah, I'm not 100 years old, maybe I look kind of that way after watching the Trump administration for the last 4 years. But anyway, here's James Clyburn talking also about this possible coming split in the Democratic Party between the progressives and the moderates, talking about socialism and defund the police, actually blaming defund the police for Lindsey Graham returning to the Senate. I don't know, that might be one step too far, but you can let me know what you think down in the comment section after we watch James Clyburn on NBC News' Meet the Press talking to Chuck Todd this morning together over here.
I'm curious, we've heard the reports that there was sort of a call with the Democratic Conference last week, and some of the more centrist Democrats that survived but barely complained about the socialism label, the phrase defund the police. You were somebody, I remember the day you came on this show and said, let me tell you something about that phrase, defund the police, and you were very aggressive pushing back on it. But do you think that did cost you House seats, the socialism label, particularly in South Florida, those 2 seats, and defund the police?
Well, I don't know about all the seats. I've talked to people down in South Florida that told me that really, really was a problem down there. But I can tell you about the 1st Congressional District of South Carolina. I really believe that that's what cost Joe Cunningham his seat. And I can also tell you about the Senate here in South Carolina. Jamie Harrison started to plateau when defund the police showed up with a caption on TV right across his head. That stuff hurt Jamie. And that's why I spoke out against it a long time ago.
Right.
I've always said that these headlines can kill a political effort. We are all about making headway. And I just hope that going forward, we will think about each one of these congressional districts and let people represent their districts. You know, Joe Cunningham could not get elected in my district, and I can't get elected in his.
Right.
So let's recognize that people should reflect that diversity in our country.
Let me get you to respond to something that Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said in an interview this weekend. She said, the last 2 years have been pretty hostile. Externally, we've been winning. Externally, there's been a ton of support. But internally, it's been extremely hostile to anything that even smells progressive. That was about how things have worked inside the Democratic Congress. How would you respond to her?
Well, you know, sometimes I have real problems trying to figure out what progressive means. You know, I tell people all the time, my father was very conservative. He was a minister. I never heard him ask his congregation to give conservatively. He always asked for a liberal offering. And so I believe that it's good to be conservative at times and in many ways, but it's also good to be liberal at times in many ways. And so you have to balance all of this out. Now, some people refer to me as being moderate. I've been called conservative, and I've been called a flaming liberal. What would we call John Lewis? You know, anytime you challenge the status quo, you're looked upon as being liberal. No, you just want to be a part of what's going on in this great country, the country that you've helped to make great, and that's all this is. So I don't get hung up on labels. So I don't know what I am. I'm an American, a very proud American. Right. And I'm a Democrat, a very proud Democrat. So I just want us to be Democrats in the big tent, and these labels I reject.
And right now you've been my guest here on Meet the Press, Democratic Congressman Jim Clyburn from South Carolina.
So there you see Jim Clyburn attacking defund the police, attacking socialism, as a label, or you saw Kate Bdeingfield also both reacting to statements from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But we're not just going to talk about AOC behind her back. We're actually, I'm going to show you a 5-minute clip of Jake Tapper talking to AOC about this divide in the Democratic Party, if it's going to happen now that Biden has won, and now the progressives are going to start pushing the moderates. And by the time I get to Pete Buttigieg at the end, I think I'm going to have a solution to this problem. But here you can see AOC responding to those veiled, unveiled attacks from the right, and especially there's actually going to be you'll see Jake Tapper start asking AOC about this Representative Spanberger attack on her that includes multiple expletives that are deleted out. No expletives allowed on CNN's State of the Union, even though they are newsworthy. I say, fuck that. Fuck that. Fuck the censorship of the expletives in this questioning to AOC, but you can let me know what you think after we watch that clip together over here.
You got it.
I'll let you punt that one now. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says that she thinks Biden has a tremendous mandate, but Democrats in Congress are potentially looking at a smaller House majority and theoretically a Republican Senate. I want to play something that Virginia Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger said on a conference call of House Democrats this week that you, I'm sure, heard as it happened live. Take a listen.
We need to not ever use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Because while people think it doesn't matter, it does matter. And we lost good members because of that. If we are classifying Tuesday as a success from a congressional standpoint, we will get torn apart in 2022. And excuse the profanity, that's the reality.
I imagine you disagree with that assessment. Why is she wrong?
So, first and foremost, I want to acknowledge that first of all, just the really hard fight that a lot of our swing district members had. And it is not to deny that Republicans levied very effective rhetorical attacks against our party. That, I believe, is absolutely true. But I think one of the things that's very important is to realize that very effective Republican attacks are going to happen every cycle. And so the question is, how do we defend ourselves against that? If you look at some of these, some of the arguments that are being advanced, that defund the police hurt, or that arguments about socialism hurt, not a single member of Congress that I'm aware of campaigned on socialism or defunding the police in this general election. And these were largely slogans, or they were demands from activist groups that we saw in the largest uprising in American history around police brutality. And so the question that we have is, how can we build a more effective democratic operation that is stronger and more resilient to Republican attacks? And I believe that there are many areas that we can point at in centralized democratic operations that are extraordinarily weak. For example, our digital campaigning is very weak. And this is an area where Republicans are actually quite strong. President Trump, he won the 2016 election, as we know, largely on digital organizing and strategy. And I believe that many Republicans were very effective at digital organizing and strategy as well, whereas the Democratic Party is still campaigning largely as though it's 2005. And I know a lot of us don't want to hear this, but 2005 was 15 years ago. So we can do better. And then when we really dig down and refine our operations, we can be more resilient to these strong Republican attacks.
You told the New York Times that you almost didn't even run for re-election, in part because of treatment from your own party. You said, quote, "It's the incoming, it's the stress, it's the violence, it's the lack of support from your own party. It's your own party thinking you're the enemy," unquote. Do you really think other Democrats see you as the enemy? Do you think Joe Biden sees you that way?
I don't believe Joe Biden, I don't believe President Biden sees me that way. And I believe that that's actually one of the reasons why he won election. There's a marked difference between 2020 and 2016 in how the Democratic Party was able to unify, to Joe Biden's credit, before the election and get everyone on the same page to make sure that we vote Donald Trump out of office. That being said, there are, at least in the House caucus, very deep divisions within the party. And I believe that we need to really come together and not allow Republican narratives to tear us apart. As you mentioned, we have a slimmer Democratic majority. It's going to be more important than ever for us to work together and not fight each other. And so when we kind of come out swinging, not 48 hours after Tuesday, when we don't even have solid data yet, pointing fingers and telling each other what to do, it deepens the division in the party, and it's irresponsible. It's irresponsible to pour gasoline on these already very delicate tensions in the party. So we can help. It's not saying that every member has to campaign as a progressive in a traditional progressive way, but it's to say that we have assets to offer the party that the party has not yet, fully leaned into or exploited. And I believe that we can take some of these seats. I think Katie Porter is an amazing example. Michael Levin. There are swing seats. Every single swing seat member that co-sponsored Medicare for All won their reelection.
Right.
And so the conversation's a little bit deeper than that, than just saying, anything progressive is toxic and a losing message.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, thanks so much.
And I especially agree with that last thing that AOC said, that all the progressives in the swing districts who supported Medicare for All won re-election. So saying progressive positions are toxic in swing districts, that's not true. And I'll talk about that a little more in the clip after next when I show Pete Buttigieg talking about how a majority of Americans support Democratic positions, even if the Senate doesn't, because the Senate is created structurally to support minority positions. But I'm actually a fan of AOC. I think that she is going to be an increasingly central voice in the Democratic Party under a Biden administration. When I was talking about good cop, bad cop earlier, in some ways I was thinking Biden's the good cop and AOC is the bad cop, when it comes to what Republicans should be negotiating with. Like, Biden can good cop them, and AOC and the squad, the increasing squad, because there's a increasing progressive wing of the Democratic Party. I think that they are the bad cop to make Republicans negotiate, but you can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I have two more newsmaker clips. This is sort of the total opposite side from AOC of the Democratic Party. This is something I wanted to mention or to emphasize when I talked about how there are two seats up in the air for who controls the U.S. Senate. There's going to be these two runoff elections, it seems, in Georgia, that it's going to decide whether there's a 50-50 Senate, that then Vice President Kamala Harris breaks the tie in the 50-50 Senate. But the one thing you have to remember about that is one of the Democratic senators is this dude, Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, who is pretty much the most conservative of all the Democratic senators, and he is not ready to go for, well, I'll play the clip and then we'll talk about how even if the Democrats win both races in Georgia, they can't go anywhere farther than what this dude wants. This is Margaret Brennan talking about how climate change is a problem, but we still have to frack and frack and frack. Not frickin' frack, but frack and frack, with Joe Manchin on CBS News' Face the Nation this morning over here.
If you agree with your Democratic colleague, Congressman Richmond, who said this was a wake-up call to senators, this election, that it is a different day. Do you agree? And what should the president-elect's first order of business be?
Well, basically, Joe Biden has said he's going to be a president for all of us, and that's exactly what he has to do, bring us all together, bringing Democrats and Republicans together, because it is a wake-up call for all of us. The country is more divided now than at any time in our history, or basically any time since the Civil War, as far as I can see, and we don't want to go back to those days. So we have to come together.
Joe Biden got elected in a very, very contested primary. And all the nuances that were thrown on the Democratic Party is not who we are. He was not for any of the stuff. And I think Jim Clyburn said it best. That was an albatross around us, basically labeling every Democrat as a socialist or supporting socialism. That's not who we are. It's not who I am. It's not how we were raised. And it hurt a lot of good Democrats in rural America, Montana for one, other places around the country.
Well, President Trump says he's fighting for the forgotten men and women, and he seems to define that as non-college educated whites. 80% of the workforce in your state lacks a four-year college degree. It went ruby red for President Trump. Why didn't the Democratic Party's message break through?
Well, it wasn't a good message. I mean, we let them tag us before basically we could remind the people who we are, but we didn't have a good message. I'll be very honest with you, Margaret. Here's the thing. 4 years ago in rural America, in America in general, voted for Donald Trump because Democrats were mad, independents were mad. They thought they'd been left behind. And I always said this, West Virginians felt like they were returning Vietnam veteran. We did everything this country asked, and now we weren't good enough, or he left us behind. There was no pathway forward. So they voted in record numbers. They went from being mad to being scared in 2020. They were scared of this socialism that was thrown out there by a radical part of the so-called left that was throwing all this out that basically scared the bejesus out of people. And that hung on strongly. And it's not who we are. It is not who we are, and it's not what we're about. And I have fought against that. Joe Biden has fought against that. We're not for New Green Deal. We're not for all the things that he's talked about, Medicare for all. We can't even pay for Medicare for some. We got to take care of a lot of things.
Well, I want to ask you about that because I understand who you say Democrats are, but obviously there isn't a lot of agreement at this point within the party. Your Republican colleague Mitt Romney said this election shows conservative principles are on the ascendancy. Americans don't want to get rid of coal or gas. They don't want Medicare for all. You just said that the Green New Deal is not something that people want. There's a whole lot of fracking, I understand, in West Virginia and a whole lot of coal. But did the president-elect's energy message hurt him? Is that also what you're saying? That it's not just socialism, that it's what Joe Biden said?
What Joe Biden said and what Joe Biden's bill is, the Biden energy plan, and we're working with that, is going to be an all-inclusive. You need all of the energy. First and foremost, you must be energy independent. To have the most powerful nation on earth, we can't be dependent on any foreigners, foreign countries for our energy sources. So that means we're going to use coal, and we're going to use gas, and we're going to use oil, and we're going to be able to use our renewables and be able to develop the fuels of the future. But we're going to do it in the cleanest fashion. I believe in innovation, not elimination. And we've talked about this. And what was said and what we're going to do is two different things. And it did come across wrong, and it was very difficult. But that didn't help at all. But I can tell you, Joe Biden is not against fracking. Fracking can be done, and we do it every day in West Virginia and do it in the safest manner. We capture the methane. We don't let it escape into the air, and all these things can be done better.
I want to ask you what can actually get through, because it seems in early reporting.
So I hope you didn't experience like political whiplash between those last two clips going from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, one of the more progressive voices in the House, to Senator Joe Manchin, basically the most conservative Democrat in the U.S. Senate, but basically that is the good cop, bad cop, or I guess AOC is the bad cop, Joe Manchin is the good cop. Joe Biden, I guess, is starting off as the good cop. Who knows what kind of cop he's going to be. But I want to finish this live stream with a clip of former Mayor Pete Buttigieg, who didn't win, but is also kind of he's gay from Indiana, but he's also from Indiana, so that makes him kind of a moderate voice in the Democratic Party. But I think he is actually pointing to the real way that Democrats should move forward in terms of the structural inequities in the system that is created by our Constitution, where Joe Manchin, he may be like a centrist in the Senate, but the Senate itself is a really undemocratic institution in our constitutional system. And I think Pete Buttigieg does a great job of pointing that out in this last newsmaker clip I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
It looks likely, not certain, but likely that Republicans are going to hold on to the Senate. It's going to come down to 2 special elections in Georgia, and Republicans will be favored in both if Republicans hold the Senate. If the majority leader is Mitch McConnell, isn't that really going to hurt some of the boldest parts of the Biden agenda? Things like a public option for health care or raising taxes by $4 trillion.
Well, again, first of all, Georgia has proven itself to be extraordinarily competitive. And so with the 2 fantastic candidates, Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff, that we have running, I have every expectation that it'll be a competitive race and that we can very well take the majority in the Senate. If that doesn't happen, at the end of the day, again, the thing we have going for us is that the American people are with us. We're not just talking about the House of Representatives and the White House. We're also talking about the strong majority of the American people, an even stronger majority than the one that brought Joe Biden to office. When we talk about some of the things you just mentioned, making sure that corporations and the wealthy pay their fair share, making sure that we expand access to health care. And so the McConnell caucus, the Republican caucus in the Senate, will have to decide whether it wants to continue facing down the American people and standing in the way of what America wants, which I think would be a decision strategically to make the Republican Party a party of minority rule? Or is there a willingness to reach across the aisle and get something done? Now, if we know one thing about President-elect Biden, it's that he's somebody who has that instinct of getting things done, reaching across the aisle, especially in a place like the Senate. And I think that's going to be exactly the set of attributes that will be so important to getting anything done at all.
But as you well know, the founders created checks and balances, divided or a balanced government, 3 branches. If you're Mitch McConnell, who just got elected, if you return, I understand it's a thought experiment, with a Republican majority, they're going to say there was no agenda, there was no public mandate for a public option, there was no mandate for raising taxes $4 trillion. The country allowed us to retain the Senate.
Yeah, the structure of the Senate is such, for better or for worse, that you can have a Senate majority that disagrees with the majority of the American people. But then Mitch McConnell's going to have a decision to make. Is his purpose in Washington to defy the American people, who, along with the president and the House of Representatives, will believe in expanding, not taking away health care, ensuring that the wealthy pay their fair share in taxes instead of slashing their taxes no matter what, raising wages, treating climate change as real? In other words, Mitch McConnell's going to have to decide whether he wants to help move this country forward and influence progress, or whether he wants to stop progress. If he chooses to do that, I'm fearful not only that the Republican Party would pay a devastating price politically, but that the American people would pay a price that we can't afford to pay, because we need action.
Well, let's talk about a much more serious and more immediate.
So kudos to Pete Buttigieg for making the argument that the Senate is a non-democratic institution. If you read the U.S. Constitution, you see that every state gets the same amount of votes. Wyoming has only like 500,000 people, and California, where I live, has like 30 plus million people. That's not fair. And that's something I might talk about in a non-live stream video I might make in the next 73 days before January 20th, 2021, about how we could maybe change the filibuster in the Senate so that it isn't a 60% of the states, but 60% of the population, a small d Democratic filibuster. There are 435 reps in the House of Representatives, and we could give every senator the same votes as their state has in the House. That would be 870 votes, where 522 would be 60% of a small d Democratic majority filibuster, 60% in the Senate. That's whatever. You probably don't even know what I'm talking about, but I really appreciate Pete Buttigieg talking about how the Senate is not really a Democratic institution, and if Mitch McConnell is going to stop Joe Biden from getting policies enacted that a vast majority of the American public support, that would be maybe the death of the Republican Party as anything but a minority party. But anyway, you can let me know what you think down in the video, in the comment section. If Republicans are becoming a minority party that can never win the presidency, can only win the Senate, and live on through the 6-3 Supreme Court majority. Anyway, that is just not tenable in a democracy, and that's why my topic this week is democracy after Trump. How are we going to live in a democracy after Trump? But anyway, that's my last newsmaker clip. I'm going to end the show with a Dash and Sandy clip, a dandy clip for the Dash and Sandy fans out there. This is it's not from today. I'm upfront. I'm admitting it's not from today. It's last night. I was waiting for the Biden acceptance speech after all the networks said Biden won the election. While I was waiting, I had to let Dash and Sandy out of the door, and I watched Dash and Sandy come in and then go down the hallway, and I kept this clip because it shows after I'm waiting for Biden to accept he is the president-elect, then I get to watch Dash and Sandy have glowing demon eyes. What that means, you can let me know what you think after we watch that final Dash and Sandy clip together over here.
Under a new kind of political assault from a president totally untethered to the truth, to the norms, to decency, to facts, who sought to put Joe Biden's family through the...
Glowing demon eyes. I promised you, I showed you glowing Dash and Sandy demon eyes, and that's where I'm going to finish up the show. Oh, Lulu Girl just gave me a final super chat contribution asking if I'm going through the inauguration. Yes, Wednesday, January 20th, 2021. I will at least do one more Sunday live stream roundup after that Wednesday. What is that? Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So 4 days after that, I will do at least one more live stream on January 24th. Whether I will do one on January 31st, that remains to be seen. But anyway, thank you all for joining me for the live stream. I will be back next Sunday and every Sunday at least through January 24th, 2021, until next Sunday, or until I have some other reason to upload a video. I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.